My wife was holding a hammer in one hand and my manhood in another. Hi, my name is Bill, and you're about to hear a true story that is so shocking it's sure to change the way you think about your penis forever. Frankly, I'm terrified to share it with you because, honestly, it's the most horrific and humiliating thing I have ever experienced. Regretfully, the exact same thing could easily happen to you. And that's why I'm going to reveal what I did when erectile dysfunction nearly destroyed everything I ever loved in my life. I've decided to come forward and tell my story because, during this dark and awful chapter, I was able to uncover the truth about ED that no one else is giving you. Factual, science-based information that is fully documented by major research institutions around the world that proves ED has nothing to do with low testosterone, age, or anything else that is, quote-unquote, wrong with you. If you think testosterone supplements, shots, or low-T therapies are the answer, it's time for me to pull back the curtain and expose what's really going on. Because, in this short presentation, you're going to learn how I permanently erased my ED in a few short hours without 1. Taking any male enhancement pills. 2. Spending a dime on drugs like Viagra, Cialis, or Levitra, which only partially treat the symptoms and often do more harm than good. 3. Coughing up in excess of $2,000 on low-T therapies that only work in less than 5% of men. The result? I was able to turn back the clock and blast off with on-demand, long-lasting, and rock-hard erections that gave my wife more unadulterated pleasure than she's felt in years. I'm talking about those kind of almost too big but every girl loves them erections that you had when you were a teenager. Remember those? Well, if you follow the technique I discovered, you can experience these same results starting as soon as today. And it doesn't matter how old you are, how long you've been struggling with erection issues, or even if you don't have a problem but are just looking for a little more oomph in your sex life. And, yes, if you're skeptical, I totally get it. I would be too. Indeed, before I dug out the truth, I believed just like everybody else I had to hang my head in shame. Buy those little blue pills and hope and pray they really worked and that I would finally win in the bedroom again. The reality is the only folks who are winning are companies like Pfizer, Bayer, and Sanofi, the big pharma giants, and the billions they make profiting from our shame. So, if you want to change all that, just listen to what I have to say. If you have 5 minutes, I'll explain the simple science behind my discovery and show you how to address your own ED issues with a simple yet proven technique. It's a way to finally get your sex life back on your own terms. And that's precisely what more than 48,742 men have already experienced. Men like Kevin Saunders from Atlanta, Georgia, who was skeptical at first, but, well, listen to what he has to say and you'll see what I mean. I watched your video and heard about your completely all-natural way of getting an erection whenever I wanted to, without any annoying pills, and it seemed like a fantasy to me. I could actually cure my ED simply by using some items I could get at my local store? I had to ask myself, why hadn't I heard about this before? I decided to give in and go for it. I was simply fed up of spending $8 for every pill that didn't fix the problem long term. My love life had been suffering because of this decision and I was losing all hope. I thought to myself, what have I got to lose? And went for it. I gave your method a try and can honestly say that within 48 hours I was getting the best erections of my life. It's hard to believe, but the feeling was incredible. Now let's just say my love life is the best it's been in years, and I can make my wife happy several times a day. Thanks, Bill. I can't believe I didn't discover this earlier. And Kenneth Danielson from Minneapolis, Minnesota, who shared, before coming across your website, my life was miserable. My sex life with my wife was non-existent. My biggest issue was that I already had a medical condition that meant I could not take ED pills. So I was pretty limited on options. I tried a few wonder extracts that didn't help my problem at all. They just contained chemicals that really did more harm than good for my body. Your natural method for curing ED really does work, and I can't thank you enough. It's set out in a way that I could easily follow, and the results speak for themselves. Let's say that non-existent sex life is completely the opposite now. My marriage is the best it's been in years. Thank you, Bill. All the best. And Jason Wallace from Boise, Idaho, who wrote to say, I split up with my wife about 6 months ago, and the idea of being intimate with a woman who wasn't my ex was pretty scary, to say the least. I dated several women and sadly could not perform when it came to the big moment. Nerves and anxiety got the better of me. Each time it happened, it got worse, as it made me think it would happen the next time I had the opportunity to be with a woman, and it just got worse and worse. I was truly shocked when I watched your video and discovered that there really was a simple way to guarantee that my equipment would be ready to perform, even if I was nervous or afraid at that moment. I read your guide and started doing exactly what you said to do, and sure enough, I had absolutely no trouble with getting it up. You stuck by your word. I'm so relieved that I can date women again now without the worry of this happening. No matter the circumstance, I know I'll be able to perform by following your method. I can enjoy sex now and have fun again, which is what life is all about. Thanks for your help, Bill. That's just a handful of the nearly 50,000 men who have already used what I expose in this brief presentation to completely eliminate ED forever. They are enjoying more, better, longer, and stronger sex than ever before, and now you can too. In fact, you can start to get results in just a few short hours from right now. So I'm sure you want to get directly to the good stuff, right? Well, to understand why my discovery works so well and why nobody else is telling you about it, it's important for you to know a little bit about me and my story. As I mentioned, my name is Bill Crane. I'm 52 years old, and I currently live in Lincoln, Nebraska. It was nearly 4 years ago to the day that my wife, Sarah, lifted that hammer above my manhood. As you might imagine, it was totally unexpected, especially since it happened on her 50th birthday. I had known that turning the big 5-0 was hard for Sarah, but I had no idea what was really going on inside her head. I thought it was just the typical getting older stuff. Buying her really nice jewelry had always worked in the past, so I saved up to score her a brilliant diamond bracelet. She'd been eyeing it for months, so I was sure it was going to do the trick. Boy, was I wrong. I planned to take her to a nice dinner on her birthday and give her the bracelet for dessert. However, it was a slow day at work, so I decided to come home early and surprise her. Little did I know, it was going to be me who was the recipient of the biggest and most painful surprise of the day. Of my life, actually. I wanted to make the most of the surprise, so I parked in front of the neighbor's house and snuck in through the back door. In one hand, I had the bracelet all wrapped up. In the other, I had a big bouquet of her favorite flowers. I was pretty proud of myself. This was going to be a great birthday after all, I thought. As I tiptoed through the kitchen, I heard her talking in the other room. I peered around the corner and realized she wasn't just talking, she was crying. And hard. She was sitting on the sofa with her friend Jean, who had her arms around her, comforting her. And that's when it happened. She cut me to the core. So deeply, and all in a flash. Yes, I love him, she explained to Jean. He's a good man, and we've been married for almost 30 years now. But if I'm being really honest, I just miss sex. I mean, I really, really miss it. More than that, I miss having a real man. I feel terrible for saying it, but it's true. As I was sinking to my knees in horror, she continued, he just can't, do what he used to do anymore, if you know what I mean. He was the first man to ever give me real pleasure. Now it's almost as if he doesn't even know I'm a woman anymore. It makes me feel so unattractive. Will I have to go unsatisfied for the rest of my life? I felt like I was going to be sick when she struck the final blow. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but when I'm out, I get hit on all the time by other guys and I really like it. And when I'm alone, I find myself thinking about these other men and what it would be like to spend the night with them. I'm not sure that I'd actually do it for real, but it's very tempting. That's when it felt like she had a hammer in her hand and smashed it down on my groin. My heart hit the floor with a painful thud. Those few seconds felt like an eternity, and that pain seemed to become more unbearable with every word she spoke. I'm not sure how I got out of the house or how I ended up in the parking lot in front of Starbucks, but there I was. I was sickened. I was horrified. I was angry. I don't know if anyone has ever challenged your manhood, but when your wife of nearly 3 decades says you're not a real man, when she pictures being with other men, there's no lower or worse feeling. Like you've let down the only person who matters in life. That you are a disappointment. That you can't even satisfy your own wife. I thought I was going to be physically sick right there in the car. Problem was, she was right. If I was being really honest, my fear of being able to get an erection, not to mention regular and fully hard ones, and to keep them up, had totally killed our sex life. Sure, we slept in the same bed, but since it was becoming more and more difficult to get hard, I had pretty much given up. And while the ED pills my doctor prescribed seemed to work at first, there were just too many side effects. And it wasn't just the cramps, headaches, diarrhea, or chest pain. At nearly $8 a pop, I was spending hundreds just to get hit-or-miss results. And if you've had to do it, you know that there's nothing more humiliating as a man than trying to have to stand in the pharmacy line to get pills because you can't get it up anymore. Talk about not feeling like a real man. It was awful. But it was also a catch-22. If I didn't use the pills, I was almost sure I wasn't going to have an erection. Even when I did, the results were not guaranteed. On more than a few occasions, I initiated sex and then had to roll over totally ashamed because I was as limp as a wet spaghetti noodle and I couldn't please my own wife. It was a train wreck. And it was one of those things that you just don't talk about either, which only made it 10 times worse. It's important for you to know that, just like my wife had said to her friend, I used to be able to get big, hard, and lasting erections whenever I wanted. But for the last few years, I've never had any problems like this. I guess I took that as a sign of my manhood. It wasn't uncommon for me to have sex daily, or even multiple times a day, and be able to please my partner over and over again. To lose that, well, it hurts. And deep. And that's how I'd gotten myself in this mess, and how I ended up sitting in front of Starbucks thinking about my life. How did this all happen? What was wrong with me? Why did this have to be so difficult? Wasn't this all just a result of aging? If so, getting older was going to suck. Truth is, I had no idea. But what I did know was that I couldn't live knowing my wife didn't think of me as a real man. Whether it was humiliation, pride, or just love for my wife, I decided right then and there to do everything I could to regain my manhood, to wipe out my erectile dysfunction, and to put an end to this ugly chapter of my life. And heck, I loved sex just as much as the next guy, so I was determined to figure out what these traditional prescriptions for ED were really doing. And, more importantly, see if I could find any other solutions I could work without all the side effects and high costs. Over the next month, I spent almost every evening in my home office. For hours and hours, I poured through the internet searching for an answer, any answer I could find. Did locking myself in the office help our relationship? Nope, not at all. In fact, it made things worse than they already were. I think she was afraid I was having an online affair or was avoiding her or, well, who knows. All I do know is that I tried to do what I could to let her know I loved her. See, I was obsessed. I'd convinced myself that finding a cure, something natural, something I was overlooking, something that just had to be there, was going to make this difficult time totally worth it. If I could just find a way to end my ED, everything would be okay. That's what I was telling myself, because it doesn't matter how young or old you are. If you don't have a healthy sex life with your partner, you risk everything. Because, without it, you're nothing more than platonic roommates, right? I needed Sarah to know she turned me on as much today as she did 30 years ago. And that's why I just had to figure this out. As you can imagine, I ran into lots of roadblocks and obstacles. At the same time, I uncovered some shocking information. What kind of information? Well, for starters, it turns out that those low-T erectile dysfunction therapies you hear about all the time on TV and in the magazines actually only work on about 5% of men. Doctors at Columbia and other respected universities have shown that not only do low-T treatments not benefit the majority of men, but these injections, creams, and gels that can cost up to $2,000 are being connected with fun things like heart attacks, blood clots, liver problems, and even prostate cancer. It's no wonder the FDA is seriously considering outlawing them. Some cure, huh? And, even though I'd already tried those little blue pills, I wanted to really understand how meds like Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra actually worked. I knew they were incredibly expensive, but it was what I discovered when I dug in a little deeper that horrified me. I thought I had it bad with my relatively minor side effects, but I was shocked beyond words when I learned that these drugs may also cause memory problems, sudden hearing or vision loss, and even irregular heartbeat and chest pains. Believe it or not, that's only a small sample of the potentially disastrous side effects. So, here I was. I've been doing this nightly research for almost a month. I was at my wit's end, and it seemed like I was running out of options. I went so far as to see if there were any exercises I could do to improve my erections. Before you laugh, think about it. Erections are all about getting blood to your penis, right? So, if exercise increases circulations, I figured it might help. I probably don't have to tell you, but there is zero research that connects exercise and erections. But it was worth a try, wasn't it? And, while I'm sure we can all agree that hitting the gym a little more often would be a good thing, it ain't gonna help with your ED. So, A month had passed since my wife struck me at the core of my manhood. I'd spent every waking moment trying to find a solution, and what did I have to show for it? Was I really doomed to live the rest of my life in a broken marriage as half a man, unable to please my own wife? Or, worse, was she going to leave me or hook up with another man? I couldn't bear to think of Sarah having an affair. But was this what it had come to? In fact, it got so bad that I actually came this close to telling my wife to go have an affair myself. At least then I'd know it was happening rather than having her go behind my back. However, it was at that exact moment that I flashed back to her birthday, to standing there in the kitchen, her words like knives. Yes, I felt totally emasculated. But I also remembered how sad Sarah sounded, how much she wanted her husband back, and how desperate she was. So I knew I had 3 choices. I could get mad at her, although that was pointless, because no matter how hard it was to admit, we both knew she was right. I could do nothing, but that obviously wouldn't fix anything, or I could keep working and find the answer. I'd never been much of an optimist, but right then and there I knew I couldn't fail. Everything depended on me finding a way to end my ED. Permanently. And I knew I had to find it quickly, or it would be too late. So I kept at it, night after night. And I still thank my lucky stars that I did. Why? Because a few short days later, I stumbled upon the game changer I'd been working so hard to find. I stumbled upon something that would eventually be the salvation I was looking for. Something that gave me, and still gives me to this day, almost 4 years later, the ability to have erections whenever I want. Strong, firm, and there's no other way to say it, big erections that last. And now, this same solution has allowed more than 48,742 men to get these same amazing results too. This is how it happened. So, as you can imagine, I was pretty discouraged. I didn't seem to be making any headway with the traditional treatments and meds. Exercise wasn't helping. And I even went so far as to try those infomercial free trial products like Extends. They were all dead ends. So, before I gave up, I decided to dig even deeper. I was going to go beyond products that treated the symptoms of ED and find out what was at the root of the problem. That's when I turned to the real research, the scientific journals, the double-blind studies, the physiology behind it all. And that's when I had my aha moment. When you break it down, understanding ED is not rocket science. You may think that it's some hyper-complicated, super-scientific thing, but when you get down to brass tacks, it's pretty dang basic. Let me explain. And don't worry, you won't need a degree in anatomy to understand what I'm about to share. To uncover what causes ED, we first need to realize what happens when you have an erection. 1. Your penis actually has 2 chambers in it, known as the corpora cavernosa. 2. These chambers are filled with blood vessels. You can think of them sort of like sponges. 3. When you're stimulated, these blood vessels are supposed to open or relax to allow blood from your arteries to fill them up. You probably see where this is going, right? 4. So, once they're filled up and pressurized, voila, you have yourself an erection. Pretty straightforward stuff. Get turned on, pump in some blood, create pressure, and there you go. Problem is, if you're suffering with ED, or just can't seem to get as firm or as big erections as you used to, things aren't working quite like they're supposed to. Why is this? At its most basic, those blood vessels in your penis simply aren't completely relaxing. As a result, the blood isn't making it into your penis. And if that's not happening, neither is an erection. Can you believe it? Can you really believe that's all there is to ED? In fact, this one issue is pretty much at the heart of every erection problem. It's not something in your head. It's not something wrong with you. It's not because you're cursed or doomed to never have an erection again. And it's not just me saying that. Study after study by prominent universities have demonstrated this time and time again. Your vessels are not relaxing. Blood is not flowing. Erections aren't happening. That's it. Period. End of story. And that's exactly what got me thinking. Popping pills couldn't be the answer for something so fundamental, so natural, so basic as having an erection. There's got to be a better way to address this issue without drugs. I was willing to try anything and even started looking at ancient remedies. Turns out this thing we call erectile dysfunction has shown up throughout history, and just about every culture has their own ideas about how to treat it. And, believe me, some are really out there. like baby crocodile hearts, ground-up beetles, and even monkey testicles. Some of their ideas weren't nearly as extreme, like lotus flowers and ground deer antlers. So I tried as many as I could find, and I documented all of my results. Regretfully, those results were pretty disappointing. If anything, the side effects from these so-called remedies wouldn't have been worth it even if they did work. The herbal blends that I found online and in my local health food store didn't work any better. They ended up just making me feel dizzy, sick to my stomach, and most of them smelled really weird, so I don't think my wife would have wanted to be with me anyway. At this same time, I also started exploring things like tantric yoga, meditative breathing, and relaxation exercises. All things to try and get my body to relax. And whereas I did feel calmer at times, there was no change to my erections. Another roadblock. Another stopping point. But I'd come too far to give up. So I started looking at biological research to see if I could unearth any clues there. And that's when things finally started clicking. See, I discovered that our bodies are filled with certain enzymes, amino acids, and naturally occurring substances that are directly responsible for relaxing blood vessels and increasing the volume of blood that pumps through your body. If you don't have enough of these, things like erectile dysfunction can be the result. But here's the wild thing. You can find these enzymes and amino acids in everyday foods and supplements, things that are right now sitting on the shelves of your local market and health food store. Items that have been proven in countless studies to do the very thing I've been searching for. Open up those blood vessels and increase blood flow. In other words, if I could just determine which of these all-natural compounds worked most effectively on the penis specifically, the result should be the ability to get and maintain youthful erections again, right? Well, that was my hunch, and since I had no other options, I went for it. For days, I combed through research articles looking for the names of these miracle enzymes and amino acids. None of the research was specifically about erectile dysfunction, but I had a feeling I was on the right path. Once I'd compiled a pretty comprehensive list, I began searching for foods and supplements that contain these compounds. I was surprised at how many there were, and that most of them are readily available. So, with my list in hand, I headed down to my grocery store, bought the weirdest selection of foods I think the checker had ever seen, and started my testing that very night. Just like all my other research, I diligently kept notes on everything. Well, as much as I'd hoped for an immediate home run, it didn't happen that way. Go figure. In the next month, I believe I tested more than 50 different combinations of various foods and supplements. The result? Yep, you guessed it. Nothing. On the plus side, I was learning about foods whose names I couldn't even pronounce, many of which tasted really good. But that wasn't the point of my research, especially since this whole time my wife and I were on thinner and thinner ice. In fact, that evening, we had a big blowout. And that's what I was thinking about as I fell asleep. How much I loved her, and how badly I felt that I was letting her down. Thankfully, even though I didn't know it, as my head hit the pillow that night, a breakthrough was only a day away. I woke up the next morning and lay in bed for a while, just thinking about the day ahead. I hadn't slept well. Sarah was already up, and I could hear her making coffee in the kitchen. And that's when it happened. I rolled over and realized I was hard. When I say hard, I mean I had a huge erection, like almost too big. I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe I was dreaming, but no, this was real. I jumped out of bed, ran into the kitchen, grabbed my wife's hand and placed it right on my erection. She was confused at first, but when she felt how insanely hard I was, she knew what I was thinking. Within seconds, we were back in the bedroom and having some of the best sex of our lives. In an instant, all the pain, all the fear, all the sadness seemed to wash away. It probably didn't hurt that over the next hour we had some of the most passionate and erotic sex we've had in years. And as hard as it was for me to believe, I never once lost any of the vigor of my erection. After she had her third orgasm, she rolled over and asked, "What in the world is going on?" She wanted to know if I'd taken a double dose of Viagra or some new drug. It was at that moment I had to tell her the truth. So I told her everything. From hearing that conversation, to driving to Starbucks and feeling the world crash around me. Not feeling like a real man. Incapable of satisfying my wife. I shared the pain, the anger, and the helplessness. And, of course, I told her about everything I'd been doing for the past 4 months to try to get my manhood back. I didn't leave out any details. Her first reaction wasn't what I expected. She was upset with me that I hadn't told her sooner, but within moments she just kept saying, "Oh, Bill, you must really love me." And here I didn't know what was happening and feared the worst. We talked for another 30 minutes. Then what she said next put the fear of God in me. Let's do it again. A flood of thoughts hit me all at once. What if I can't get it up? What if it was a fluke? What if I disappoint her again? I was swimming in these fears when Sarah began gently kissing my neck. And whammo! It just happened. I had another erection that was even more powerful than the first. It was incredible. And that's the moment my life changed forever. It was the moment I got my manhood back. We had sex 2 more times that day, and then again the next morning. Whatever I had done was working. Now I just had to figure out what exactly it was. I'd been taking a lot of different combos of foods and supplements, so I needed to narrow it down to what the solution really had been. Thankfully, I'd been taking copious notes. So I simply repeated the same thing I'd done the day before. And it was so easy. It involved consuming a series of everyday foods together with a specific supplement. That's it. The trick was to get the timing and quantities right on everything. And since I'd written it all down, it was just a matter of following the exact same steps. Did it work? Well, all I'll say is that evening I only managed to make it halfway through dinner before we had to rush to the bedroom for a long night of lovemaking. And that's what happened, night after night, day after day. It felt like we were teens again. We had more sex in that following month than I think we had during our entire marriage. And it wasn't just quantity either. The quality of sex, how hard my erections were and how long I could last, was amazing. All my wife had to do was look at me a certain way and I was aroused. It was better than either of us could have ever imagined. I quickly discovered there were a bunch of foods I could eat that would generate exactly the same results. The key was to make sure I was getting the right amino acids, enzymes, and proteins in the proper amounts at the right time of day and combined with the correct supplements. When I did that, I continued to have what my wife dubbed her on-demand erections. Problem was, I was actually having too many. I could just think about my wife and I'd get instantly hard. This was fine if I was home, not so good when I was in a meeting with my bosses. Yep, that really happened. Luckily, it was an easy fix. I adjusted my eating plan and lessened the potency, and of course I documented everything in my files. It was about this time that my coworkers and friends noticed the change in me. "What's going on?" they asked. "You seem different." And that's when I decided to tell them my story. Heck, if it had worked for me, maybe one of these guys needed help too. And boy, did they! Each and every one of the guys that heard about what I'd done wanted to get their hands on my special erection prescription. It made me realize how many men were struggling with the same kinds of issues I was. So I spent a few days distilling all of my research down into a guide of sorts. I outlined the foods and supplements they needed. I explained when and how to put everything together to get the best results. I even included a section about what to do if, like me, they were getting too good of a result, if you know what I mean. As you can imagine, there were a few skeptics in the bunch. But it didn't take long to make believers out of them. I mean, you can't argue with a rock-hard erection, can you? In that first week after I emailed my homemade guide to the guys, I got more calls, texts, and emails from them than I think I ever had before. They were all blown away. Every single one of them. Indeed, my best friend and colleague Brian took me aside at work one day and shared with me that ED was ruining the relationship with his wife. For years now, he'd been unable to please her and felt horrible about it. She even threatened to leave on a number of occasions. And he thinks she may have even had an affair already. I felt many of the same things he had, so I could understand the pain he was going through. Just then, as he was telling this to me, his face brightened, and he broke out with the biggest smile. See, he tried out my formula for himself, and he and his wife had already mended fences and were enjoying each other like young lovers again. "We just can't keep our hands off each other," he said. He couldn't stop thanking me. Then there were other friends who admitted that, although they didn't have ED or any problems getting it up, they had decided to give my remedy a whirl, just for the fun of it. They could barely contain their excitement when they told me that their erections were harder, bigger, and more satisfying than they could ever remember. They also told me their girlfriends and wives wanted them to let me know how grateful they were as well. This went on for about a month. More and more people were getting word about my secret recipe. It was getting forwarded from friend to friend, all over the country actually, and that's when I made the decision. It was going to be awkward. It was going to be a little embarrassing. But I needed to share my discovery with the world. Men who were struggling with ED or who just wanted a better sex life needed to learn about what I'd uncovered. They needed to know that they could get these kinds of results too and without harmful or expensive drugs. And that's exactly why you're here on this website. I'd considered approaching the big pharma companies with my discovery, but my wife stopped me. Sure, they might buy it from you, she explained, but then they'll lock up your formula in their vaults so that nobody ever hears about it. And she was right. You can't patent everyday foods and readily available supplements. And if you can't patent them, you can't make a fortune off customers who buy them. Drug companies were not the answer. So that's when I decided to create this website, put up this presentation, and make my guide available to people everywhere. My ED Freedom System gives you the only 100% natural and drug-free way to eliminate your ED by addressing the real cause and not just treating the symptoms. I spent months turning that first guide I shared with my friends and colleagues into a comprehensive program that gives you everything you need to end your suffering and regain your manhood. From the various amino acids, enzymes, and proteins you need, when you need to take them, where you can find them, and more. The awesome thing is that, since the fundamental ingredients can be found in many different foods, you have lots of options, even when you're dining out, and nobody will ever know that you're fixing your ED the entire time. In addition, the ED Freedom System also allows you to adjust the formula to your unique situation. That means you can dial it up or down as needed and tune in the specific results you're looking for. Plus, it's totally natural, has zero side effects, and is 100% proven and guaranteed to work for you. When you combine the ED Freedom System with about $15 of everyday products you can find at the market, you'll have everything you need to begin to experience the kind of rock-hard erections you and your partner have been longing for. Best of all, once you use this life-changing program for even a short period of time, as little as 2 weeks, your blood vessels will begin relaxing naturally. That's right. You only need to follow the program for 14 days, and you have set yourself up for a lifetime of increased stamina, improved girth, and more satisfying on-demand erections. Picture how amazing it's going to feel to be able to get it up and keep it up whenever and for however long you want. No more fear of failing. No more worrying about it working. This is what's possible. Indeed, this is what 48,742 men have already begun experiencing firsthand for themselves. Men like Jeffrey Rogers from Franklin, Tennessee, who made my day with his email that reads, "Bill, I want to thank you for sharing your ED Freedom method with people. To come out there and share your story with guys around the world takes some guts. You seriously deserve an award for being so open with this issue, because guys these days tend to hide it from everyone. Here's a little bit about my story. I had gone about 6 months without an erection before I stumbled across your website while browsing online. This seems like a joke, but I tried so many ED pills, low T shots, and much more. You name it, I tried it. I even went to my doctor, who claimed I had a medical condition down there, and that was probably caused by aging. The only way to apparently fix this was to spend a fortune on surgery, which my insurance wouldn't cover. Then I came across your guide, and I'm glad I did. Within 3 days, I was getting what I'd call uncontrollable erections, and the rest is history. I now have no problem with performing in bed. I was at the stage where I thought I would never get an erection again, or enjoy being intimate with a woman like I did in my 20s. But everything changed. Your method was naturally relaxing blood vessels and allowing the blood to flow into my penis again. I just want to inform anyone out there who is undecided about your program to try it. I can promise you that you won't have any regrets. And there's also James Hall from Chicago, Illinois, who you might be able to relate to. I've never suffered from ED, and I'm in my late 50s. I guess you could say I was blessed in that department. My friend handed me a copy of your guide, and I wanted to try it out. You hear about these wonder methods all the time, so curiosity got the better of me. All I can say is, wow, I'm really glad I did try it out. There's what you'd call a normal erection, and there's an erection you can get from your plan. It was like I had just released a supercharged power source down there. In all my years of satisfying women, I can honestly say that since I've put your plan into action, I'm experiencing the best, fullest, firmest erections of my life. It's made sex much more enjoyable than it already was. I applaud you, Bill. Thanks. So, it's time to talk cost versus investment. Since the ED Freedom System is a breakthrough in ED technology that has already worked for 48,742 men, I'm sure you can appreciate why I initially considered pricing the program at between $200 and $400. If we're being really honest, that's still a lot less than you'd have to pay for a few months of Viagra, Cialis, or Levitra. But that doesn't include the long-term cost that the side effects of these drugs can cause. Is an erection really worth the heart failure, nervous disorders, hemorrhaging from your lungs, blood clots, seizures, vision loss, or acute depression that have been associated with these pills? I didn't think so. So why risk it? Why spend upwards of $2,000 a year to make yourself a guinea pig for products that are hit or miss at best and life-threatening at worst? Especially when you can take advantage of an all-natural ED therapy that will only require you to spend an additional $15 at the grocery store to get the life-changing results I've shared with you here. When you think about it that way, spending under $500 for this miracle program, which is, by the way, about the cost of one low-T injection, seems entirely reasonable, doesn't it? Particularly when you learn that low testosterone is the culprit in only 5% of ED cases, and the injections come with a ton of their own risks that are compelling the FDA to consider banning the injections altogether. However, as much as I want to be fairly compensated, I also don't want to do anything that puts the ED Freedom System out of the reach of men who really, really need it. It wasn't all that long ago that I was in your exact same position. The details of our stories might be different, but the feeling is still the same. The humiliation, the pain, the cold, sterile bedroom, the feeling of not being good enough, of not being a real man. I don't want any man to have to ever feel this again. And with the ED Freedom System, you don't have to. And that's why I wouldn't feel right about charging $200 plus for the ED Freedom System. I don't even want to charge you $100 for this life-changing program that has totally transformed the lives of more than 48,742 men just like you. So, when you act right now, and while this site is still up, I'm going to let you have the ED Freedom System and everything it includes. The guide, the list of foods and compounds, the details of how, when, what, and why, all for a small one-time investment in yourself of only $39.95. Aren't you worth it? It's super easy to get started. Just click the Add to Cart button below. You'll be taken to my secure checkout page. Once you're on that page, you'll enter your details, hit Submit, and you'll gain immediate access to the ED Freedom System and everything it offers. Feel free to follow the program online, on your phone or tablet, or download the whole thing. You can even print it out and share it with your friends. It's yours to do whatever you want with. And to make it even easier for you, I've decided to make this a no-risk decision. That's because I'm protecting your investment with my rock-solid, rock-hard erection 60-day money-back guarantee. It's simple. Click the Add to Cart button below. Take advantage of everything that's included in the ED Freedom System. Spend a full 60 days, that's 2 entire months, to try it out. I want you to see firsthand how well it works for you. Kick the tires, give it a spin, and prove to yourself that your results are as good or better than I've described here. If you're unhappy with the size, frequency, or quality of your newfound erections for any reason at all in those first 60 days, just send me an email and I'll refund your full purchase price. No questions asked. No small print, no quibbling. You'll get an immediate refund of every last cent. That's how much I believe in the ED Freedom System. And heck, when it works for over 48,742 men, I know it will work for you too. The ED Freedom System is going to change everything. You'll be amazed at what happens when you get your erections back. It's like magic. All parts of your relationship will improve. You'll feel better and more confident about yourself. In a word, life will just be great. But if you want to experience these kinds of results for yourself, you need to act now. That's because, although I know this might sound weird, my wife isn't totally comfortable that I got my name splashed across an ED product. She knows it's the right thing to do, but she doesn't want the ED Freedom System to be what defines us for the rest of our lives. She is fine at the moment, but I can't guarantee she won't change her mind sometime soon. So, you can't blame me if you leave the site today without getting your own copy of the ED Freedom System. Because the reality is, you could come back in a few short days only to find that we're no longer offering the program for sale. Then you'll just have to pray that I can get Sarah to change her mind. I don't want that to happen to you. And if you're struggling with ED issues right now, why would you either? Especially when it takes such a small investment to end your suffering and shame forever. Remember, there's zero risk to you. Everything is guaranteed. A complete and permanent reversal of your ED is only minutes away. Of course, you're the one who gets to make the final decision. In a few seconds, this video will end, and then you need to make a choice. Is today the day you change your life forever? Or is today the day you'll keep your head hung in shame? You can either continue struggling with ED, or buy into those expensive and harmful treatments, injections, drugs, pills, and creams. If spending a boatload of money and putting your health at real risk is okay with you, then there's not much else I can say. Again, it's your choice. But I'm here to tell you, you have an option that could change everything. When you get down to it, it's the only real option you have. And since I've made the ED Freedom System available to you 100% risk-free, it should be a no-brainer, right? I think you know what you need to do right now. Click that big old Add to Cart button below. Check out the program. See how simple it is. Make the best decision of your life. I'll see you on the inside. This has been Bill Crane saying thanks for making yourself a priority and watching my video. Oh, hey, you're still here? I understand. See, I hear from people all the time who still have questions after watching my presentation. It's a lot to take in, especially if this is the first time you've heard that you can permanently erase your ED with a totally natural and drug-free solution. So, let me answer a few of the questions I regularly get about the ED Freedom System. Hopefully this will make your decision even easier. First, I'm often asked to re-explain how the program actually works. So, this is going to sound obvious, but it starts and ends with your penis. Remember what I shared about the vessels in your penis, the ones that act like sponges when they're relaxed? Well, when a normal penis is aroused, the vessels relax, open up, let blood flow in, and then you get an erection. When you're struggling with ED, those vessels never fully relax or open up. As a result, yep, you guessed it, you don't get an erection, or you don't get a firm and lasting one. I discovered a combination of enzymes, amino acids, proteins, and various organic compounds that you can find in everyday foods and supplements at your local market for right around $15. When taken at the right time and in the proper amounts and in the correct combination, you can eliminate your ED by relaxing those vessels, increasing blood flow, and instantly generating the kind of striking erections you probably haven't experienced since you were a teenager. The next most common question I get is people wanting to know exactly what's included in the ED Freedom System. When you order your copy of the ED Freedom System, you'll receive a comprehensive program that gives you everything you need to end your suffering and regain your manhood. From a list of the various amino acids, enzymes, and proteins you need, which foods and supplements contain these miracle compounds, and when you need to take them and in what combinations to get the best results. You'll also learn how to personalize the formula to make it work for your unique situation and needs. That last part is super important because, as I mentioned a moment ago, we found that for many men the program works almost too well. You'll have to see for yourself, but if you get more erections than you want, there's an easy fix. Although your girlfriend or wife may not want you to change anything, if you know what I mean. Next, people want to know how long it takes to produce results. I know it sounds amazing, but if you're like most men who've gone through the program, you'll likely experience your first noticeably harder erections within 24 to 48 hours. That's right. All it takes is 1 or 2 days to get results. Then you'll be able to get those on-demand erections whenever and for however long you want. Guaranteed. And that brings me to my next most common question, my guarantee. Here's what you need to know. Click the big Add to Cart button below. Grab your copy of the ED Freedom System. You'll get everything that's included. Then, take 2 months, 60 full days, to try it out yourself. If for any reason whatsoever you're not fully and completely satisfied, just shoot me an email. I've included the email address inside the members area, and I'll refund every penny of your investment immediately. It's as simple and risk-free as that. And that's because I don't want anything to stop you from trying this life-changing solution for yourself. At this point, you're probably on board and just want to know how to get your copy, right? Again, it's super simple. Just click that big Add to Cart button below. Fill out your details on the secure page. And within minutes, you'll be granted VIP access to the complete program right on your computer, phone, or tablet. And since you can also download the entire program and print it out, you can have it ready at hand whenever you want, and even share it with any of your friends who may need the help too. Lastly, I want you to consider one final thing. I designed the ED Freedom System to offer you a completely discreet way to address your ED issues. No more embarrassing doctor's appointments, no more humiliating pharmacy visits, no more feeling like less of a man because you can't perform for your girlfriend or wife. With the ED Freedom System, you put yourself back in control. You do it in an all-natural way, and you get results within 24 to 48 hours. Plus, you do it all without anyone having to know any of your personal business. Do yourself a big favor. Click that Add to Cart button below and start taking advantage of the ED Freedom System immediately. I look forward to hearing all about your success.